welcome to On Track, Oz Resistance Network News Roundup. I'm your host, Judge Bill Bibbulmun. Now, last night, the ABC government-controlled network made an attempt to label all political activists in Australia as domestic terrorists, and it set a stage. Their star was none other than sovereign idiot John Wilson, and the show was titled about sovereign citizens. Take a look at this.
Ultimate personal freedom, meaning they think they're not subject to government laws. They don't pay taxes or fines, they drive unregistered cars, and they can be violent. In the United States, domestic anti-government extremists have murdered 32 law enforcement officers, and the Department of Homeland Security now says they're the #1 domestic terrorist threat. Tonight, 7:30 can reveal police intelligence showing that sovereign citizens are also taking root in Australia, with 300 thought to be living in New South Wales alone. James Thomas reports.
I challenge the jurisdiction of the court. You have no jurisdiction.
You're free to leave the court.
No, you are a traitor and a criminal.
Gentleman, place under arrest. Place man under arrest.
No, this is assault.
Gentlemen,
This
please
is assault.
remove him from the courtroom.
This is assault. This is assault.
John Wilson has been at war with the state for 20 years.
Get off my property. You haven't got a warrant. Piss off.
I don't need a warrant, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, you do. You've got to obey the law. Get off my property. Slavery is when you're bound and you have no rights.
John Wilson believes he is a victim of a government conspiracy. However, a domestic terror threat assessment obtained by 7:30 identifies him as an extremist member of the sovereign citizen movement and a potential terror threat to Australia.
How this came to light for New South Wales Police was just examining overseas trends.
The United States Department of Homeland Security designated sovereign citizens as the #1 domestic terrorist threat in America.
2 veterans of our West Memphis, Arkansas Police Department were patrolling the interstate as part of the department's drug interdiction team. They became involved in what seemed to be a routine traffic stop, pulling over a father and son in what looked like a church bus. My men didn't realize who or what they were dealing with. Neither officer made it home. And one of them was my son.
It's been 5.5 years since he was killed, and it was the most devastating event that ever occurred in my life.
Bob Podert is the former chief of the West Memphis Police Department. His son Brandon and police partner Bill Evans were killed by sovereign citizens Jerry and Joe Kane.
So what we're after here is not fighting, it's conquering.
Right.
I don't want to have to kill anybody. But if they keep messing with me, that's what it's going to have to come out.
This is how much hate that sovereigns have for authority and particularly for law enforcement, and we have to understand it or we're going to lose more officers. ISIS is not the #1 threat to Americans. The real problem and the real threat to Americans are the domestic terrorists in our own backyard.
I also need to know if you're...
Sovereign Citizens began in 1969 as a right-wing conspiracy movement in the United States. Sovereigns believe the moment you are born, government seeks to enslave you.
When they first get into the sovereign movement, they're happy because they don't have to pay taxes. They don't have to have a driver's license. They don't have to have insurance.
Do you have a license on you?
I do not submit to unlawful inquiry, sir.
The laws don't apply to them, so they're pretty happy about this new freedom that they have from our government.
I am protected by the law.
Do not tell me to shut up!
But when they start having encounters with law enforcement, they realize that's not true. There are boundaries.
You're not going in, sir.
And when they push those limits, violence erupts.
And you're using...
Open your window now, or I'm going to bust it out.
I am asking him for his supervisor. I am asking you for your supervisor.
self-described anti-government sovereign citizen carrying an assault rifle, tear gas, pepper spray.
Domestic anti-government extremists have murdered 32 police officers in the United States since 1995, the year of the most violent act of terror committed by sovereign citizens, the Oklahoma bombing.
6-story building, and one half of the building is sheared away.
168 people killed. Timothy McVeigh's accessory was Terry Nichols, a person designated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as a sovereign citizen.
Now the FBI says that they're the #1 threat to law enforcement in this country. The #1 threat. And yet 5 years ago we didn't know about them. Australia is facing a very similar scenario that we went through.
Discover your rights. Don't be a victim in the courts.
What is a sovereign citizen?
The word sovereign means the ultimate authority to make and impose laws. That applies to you. If you're a sovereign person, you make the laws for yourself. Yeah, out you go.
John Wilson's path towards sovereign ideology started in the late 90s. He was evicted from his home because he refused to acknowledge the mortgage over his house. Sovereign citizenship now pervades every aspect of his life.
There's never been a court of proper jurisdiction.
Do you believe in paying parking fines, for example?
Not if they're inappropriate, no. Prospective juror.
Mr. Wilson is 73. He says he's been to court at least 200 times.
You know, overseas, people like you are seen as domestic terror threats by the FBI?
No, never. Because terror induces fear. I'm not inducing fear, not at all.
This domestic terror threat assessment obtained by 730 links sovereign citizens to firearms, plans to shoot civilians, kidnap judges and murder sheriff's officers. The document also states that Australian sovereign citizens should be considered a potential terrorist threat.
We're trying to ensure that whatever threat arises in the terrorism arena, that we're actually prepared for.
Australia has not experienced high-impact violence resulting in death or casualties associated with sovereigns overseas, but there are indications of radicalisation.
Paperwork, and that's all I do. I'm not a part of Queensland, thank you, and you know it.
In Queensland, officers are confronted by standard sovereign rhetoric. It's not long before it escalates.
Who is under arrest?
You are, sir.
Who's you?
Yourself is standing right in front of us.
State the name and date of birth of the person you're arresting.
Your name for our systems is Romley Stewart Stover.
The end game is the law applies to everybody.
You've never planned to kill a sheriff officer?
No, you're talking silly now. No way.
Police intelligence reports that at a meeting of sovereign citizens at Blacktown Workers Club in 2011, plans were made to kidnap judicial officials and shoot people residing in premises that an Australian sovereign citizen was evicted from. John Wilson has admitted to organising that meeting. Did you ever plan to shoot the people that occupied your house when you were kicked out?
No, that's silly.
In 1997, Wilson did throw a plastic bag containing yellow liquid at a Supreme Court judge. In 2006, Wilson attempted a citizen's arrest of a Supreme Court judge. And in 2009, Wilson sent a letter to the police commissioner. In it, he threatened to burn down the premises he was evicted from.
Yeah, but you say you're not violent. Why would you make such a violent threat?
It's not a violent threat.
It is a violent threat.
No, it's words. Sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me.
I hope the Australians are quicker to jump on this than we were here in the United States, because it'll save officers' lives over there. And I'm not only talking about officers, I'm talking about government employees, clerks, court clerks, judges, prosecutors. They all have been attacked over here. It's going to happen there.
Let's get one thing clear. Those of us at the Oz Resistance Network are not sovereign citizens. We do not make our own laws. England has already done that for the citizens of Australia. We attempt to uphold the laws of England and the Imperial Acts, which are being ignored by our corrupt government and most of our corrupt judiciary. Now, John Wilson, is a sovereign idiot. We've been well known to the network for a long time, and he's obviously got some serious mental issues. Nonetheless, John Wilson, by the powers vested in me through the common law of England, the Crimes Act 1914, Section 13 and 15F, I declare you an outlaw. You are operating outside the law. From this day forth, the citizens of Australia, men and women, can do as they please with you. And John Wilson, should you lay your hands on a judicial officer again, and that judicial officer has proved to be sworn in through the oath of allegiance to the de jure Queen of England, then you will be charged with Section 147 of the Criminal Code Act 1995 Commonwealth, and you will be taken to the Tower of London to be imprisoned for 13 years. John Wilson, stand down. Now, in Perth, the KKK, the Keystone Cowboy Cops, are at it again. Whilst the Professor Robert Cunningham trial was underway in the District Court over police brutality and false arrest, just across the road, another trial was running with a poor victim, Brant Croswell. Take a look at this.
Engineer was slammed to the ground by an officer, his head smashed into the pavement. But the 29-year-old was the one charged, and the policeman responsible is still on the beat. Jerry Damassi has this exclusive report.
When Brant Croswell gave a police officer the finger, this is what happened. The Perth aircraft engineer was grabbed by the throat and pushed to the ground. His head then picked up and slammed into the pavement. He says he was knocked unconscious. But Mr. Croswell was the one charged with assault, and it's taken 3 years for him to clear his name.
Oh, just great. The truth has finally come out.
The 29-year-old did headbutt Senior Constable Philip Dawson outside the Moon and Sixpence in October 2012. He was found guilty of assaulting a public officer, but now, in a retrial, a magistrate has ruled he was provoked. This shocking CCTV, the key evidence. Magistrate Andrew Morn ruled the video does not indicate that the accused presented any physical threat to Dawson. But Officer Dawson told the court, "I didn't touch his throat, I grabbed the top of his chest." The magistrate saying the fact that Dawson denied pushing the accused's head into the ground beggars belief, ruling Mr. Croswell was provoked, scared and rendered defenceless.
It's been a hard few years, so lots of money involved, so yeah, I'm just really happy.
As Brad said, good result, the truth prevails.
Magistrate Morn ruled that both Officer Dawson and his offsider exaggerated their evidence as to the extent of the accused's resistance. Mr. Croswell's girlfriend filmed the entire incident on her phone, but says it was confiscated and the vision deleted. 9 News understands Philip Dawson has not been stood down in his duties as a senior constable. Mr. Croswell now has the option to press charges against him, but has not yet indicated whether he intends to do so. Jerry Damassi, 9 News.
Now, as you can see, police brutality and tampering with evidence is very much alive and well in the Perth court system and in the WA police. It's absolutely outrageous, and whilst these two cases were running, we're not convinced that anything has changed in the Perth Police Department. It is just another day for them, and they'll sweep this under the carpet as quickly as they can. Now, to Marangaroo in Sydney, you now have to, thanks to Big Brother, buy a permit and pay a fee to take photographs of the Marangaroo area. Champion world-renowned photographer Ken Duncan was recently accosted by 2 rangers at Marangaroo and told he is not allowed to take any photographs of Marangaroo without first applying for a permit and paying a fee. This is Big Brother, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what your children are going to leave school and grow up into if it's not halted immediately. It's got to stop. Okay, back to Perth again. and our dodgy public officer, whilst the ABC were gearing up to run their outrageous program last night and label all political activists domestic terrorists, Robert Paul, CPO, was in the Perth Magistrates Court fronting Chief Magistrate Heath, and noticed that there were two ABC reporters sitting in the public gallery. And whereas whenever he usually goes to court, they wait all day and clear the court out and call him up last for any matters so that the public don't see the common law argument taking place. This time he was called up early with a packed gallery and several reporters in there. But whilst Chief Magistrate Heath was rambling on his usual abuse and abusing his powers as he's renowned to do, Robert Paul, CPO, was containing himself within the law and conducting a totally different argument from the bar table until finally Mr. Heath woke up that he's on the wrong planet. Absolutely unbelievable. And of course now we know what ABC revealed last night. Yesterday's court appearance was obviously a ruse designed to trap Robert Paul, CPO, and it didn't work. Backfired again. So our dodgy public officer of the month is Chief Magistrate Heath. So that's all we have for you today. In the meantime, stay active, stay safe, and keep up the good fight. I'm your host, Judge Bill Bibbulmun. Until next time.